I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Like we have all commissioners present. Are there any additions to the agenda? None. I think we are going to move up the executive director review discussion just before old business. That way our HR consultant doesn't have to stick around any longer than she needs to. With that, we'll entertain discussion or motion on the consent agenda. Approval. Motion to second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Comments from the public. Did we have anybody sign up, or is there anybody who would like to speak?
Mr. Chair, is there an opportunity to reserve comment until later in the meeting?
Sure, yeah. I assume a specific agenda item.
It might be.
Okay. Sounds good. Anyone on the Zoom? Okay. We will move on to the executive director review discussion then. And we have our HR consultant, Sarah, with us. I think we just wanted to talk through our existing policy and kind of make sure that that process is how we want to move forward this year.
That is correct. So policy is pretty thin on this. It just says that the president and one other commissioner, which we're going to revamp that depending on how it goes this year. Maybe we'll get some additional language for the new employee handbook. But because the commission has always participated in the whole thing. So I thought it would be a good idea since we have HR Sarah now, and she will be shepherding you through the process. I'm going to play a non-existent role in it this year. So it will be, Sarah will be kind of mediating and leading you through it, that you can have a discussion about how you want to do it this year.
So we have an existing policy that is one commissioner or the president, one commissioner. We've historically done all 5 commissioners, I believe.
Mr. Chair, I would be reluctant to change policy in that the final review can be done by the chair and one commissioner, but because doing 5 people is a duck made by committee. But that means you would take input from all 5 of us, as you always have. But I think whoever the chair is should have the ability to wean down the 5 opinions into one and make them fit in those boxes. If we have to do that as 5 of us, it would be a very long process.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, are we talking about having a interaction? So
Traditionally, we've all looked at the form in executive session, talked amongst ourselves and submitted it. But allow the chair and maybe one other commissioner to condense it down to fit.
Oh, and there's a new form this year.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, so we have a new form.
We have a new form. Yeah.
and where did that come from?
I wrote that up with Sarah's assistants and others, I think other input. Yeah, so, and that is now out to the rest of the staff are doing kind of a 2-step. First step is a narrative. So they write their own self-evaluation and includes goal setting. So they'll look back at the last year, look at their achievements during the last year, and then look forward and try to set some goals, which is nice because then the supervisor can look at it and say, did you meet your goals, kind of thing. So, so we have that we can use for this process as well.
I mean, that just is the changes to engagement to backlog, right? So the employees and supervisors are considering multiple performance throughout the year.
And will you be involved in the executive director process that we go through at the end?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, I love your input in terms of what capacity it's like involvement. I'm pretty great at developing processes. So, you know, I like Robert's input in terms of everyone gives their input and the process that's already documented is followed. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes.
So I believe Sean has already started at the self-eval portion of this, and we would likely at the next meeting have a discussion, which I believe we have the option to do an open session or executive session. I assume it's been done in executive session in the past, so would we want to,
He's already waived open session, so we're good there. Yeah, so it will be an executive session.
at the next meeting?
I will not be here. I will call in, but I will get with you and submit anything ahead of time.
So do we want to get the form prior to that meeting and each
Yes.
have our?
Yes.
That would be best, I think. Okay, so we'll send that out to you. Yeah,
Anything?
and then you can kind of, you'll work with Sarah. I'll send you her contact info as well.
All right. Any other questions? Do you have any other comments or thoughts on the process?
No other comments or thoughts other than, question in terms of what other capacity you might find valuable for me to engage in. Or if you need time to kind of process and think that through.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see the changes in the new form and then maybe have questions after that. Yeah,
Would we see value of having Sarah in the executive session to kind of walk us through
Yes.
the process?
yes, very much so.
I'm okay with that, except I just want to be careful that evaluating an executive director is a completely different thing than an employee.
Right.
First of all, you have 5 supervisors and political folks and we're setting tone for the organization. So I'm not as worried about filling out those forms as I am about telling Sean what we want him to do.
By the way, just food for thought, SDAO offers board review. I think back in 2015 might have been the last time that we did a self-assessment. I think Pat Trapp was still here then. I remember up in the CBC meeting room, we had a meeting up there, but if you're so inclined, I think there may be some benefit too with SDIS on that. So
Absolutely. I didn't know there was such an offering.
I get some more information on it.
Okay,
It's a process too as well, but they typically have led it though. So I'm not sure if that's still the case, but I'll find out.
okay.
All right, sounds like we have a plan. And,
All right. Thank you, Sarah.
yeah, thank you. All right, moving on to old business. We have a Marina update and discussion about a Marina study subcommittee.
Good morning. Yes. Still kind of shell shocked after the Marina study reveal. It was very revealing, obviously. At the Scappoose Bay Marina Advisory Committee meeting last week, I think it was. Lots of ideas. Folks really interested in how, how to fix this, which wasn't really the intent of that meeting to try to, come up with solutions. But there's definitely interest in folks that want to be a part of how the Marina, the next phases. So I don't think we'll have any trouble getting folks to want to be a part of that. And I guess what I'm trying to figure out too is I'm thinking it should be outside of the advisory committee. And probably at least 1 or 2 commissioners, some members of the advisory committee, and then maybe some non-members as well, just to, I guess, kind of get the, outside flavors as well.
How many people are on the advisory committee?
Oh, good question. 7.
Can I make a suggestion right off as former commissioner and a current insurance agent, Chris Anderson, and Marina user.
Mhm. Yeah,
Several spots on it. You can hate me for saying.
I'll reach out. I'll reach out to them.
So
So yeah,
thinking a couple commissioners, some folks from the public, what, like 7 total, or do we have a number?
I'm open. Yeah, I'm not sure what a good size functional committee would be that we're, we can get good attendance and good inputs, but 7 seemed like a decent number. 2 commissioners, maybe 2 advisory committee members, 2 non-affiliated, and maybe, or a 3rd advisory, if you guys want to do something like that. I'm happy to look into that.
Sounds reasonable to me. Do we want to decide on which commissioners right now? Anybody have an interest in being on that?
I would.
Over, Commissioner Beable?
Well, I've been going to some of the meetings, but I, if we're only having 2, it should be you.
I'm fine either way. I'm sure I can get caught up on it, but, you know, if both of you want to be involved, I think that is wonderful.
Okay, got you down. I guess while we're on the marina topic, let's talk about the news, next adventure. A lot of things have happened since 2 nights ago. I think I came across a couple of our feeds and, interestingly enough, last Friday, Wella Nagelspa, tourism with CET had called me and asked if there was, was there a way for me to kind of reach upstream to find out about getting some interest level and some touring that they wanted to offer again with the Travel Portland folks. I said, hey, I apologize. I'm not sure who to talk to. And that was Friday. So we got this news and we have some ideas. Already Paul and Wella and Jason have talked to some folks. There's some prospects that are interested. But what we did find out after the staff met with Deke yesterday at Next Adventure was that they plan to continue operations through the summer. So makes sense. We were having a conversation a little earlier about, gosh, this is kind of their money making time. So that sounds as though their current plan is to operate through the summer.
Is
And
that through September or August? Or do you know?
that's all summer. September?
September.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, along the way, we'll figure out who and if, there's some interested prospects that want to figure out how to operate it or take it over or do something different or similar. Ellen?
My son works at the Scappies Bay Next Adventure and he's under the impression,
You come forward.
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm with City of Columbia City. And my son works for Next Adventure and he's under the impression that he will be there through December
Okay,
Or through
at that location. They'll be liquidating the other 3, but that one, but they are looking for.
inside info right there.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, when you said, does anybody have any interest? I knew you guys have been doing it, but I'm more than happy to have a full commission meeting if we start making some progress at the marina.
Okay.
And I'll be there.
I'm sorry, Robert, what was the first part?
Well, you asked if anybody had interest and you raised my hand, but very interested in the marina and the outcome. And I think we would all have a special meeting or whatever we need if we start to make some progress on solutions for the marina.
I'm okay with either way, whatever, no.
If you guys think it would have benefit to have the full commission, please.
I don't think it would hurt. I mean, the more people on that, brainstorming, the better. I'm game for kind of whatever. I'd figure I'd volunteer services if needed, so.
I certainly have an interest as well. So
Yes.
if we all have an interest, maybe
Yes,
this could
we all
be
do.
the second meeting of the month that we focus on the Scappers Bay Marina study.
Do we have access to people that kind of know this industry a little bit and could give us some advice as to whether or not it's liable to be picked up by somebody else or not?
The outfit BST we talked with them about possibly helping us with the phases of how to do things. We could reach out to them. Well, probably also have some pretty good ideas in district too, so.
Yeah, I was so impressed with their review and their study that if you can rely on them, it seems like they have a lot of expertise.
Mhm.
So, yeah, whatever you think is appropriate.
I think Guy has a comment. Guy, Glenn.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we have engaged with BSD station about having them advise us on, kind of a third party to work with the community and with you all on some alternatives for the future. So we're meeting with them tomorrow to talk about it, and then we'll come back, with a proposed scope of work and contract and all that, so.
That's great. Glad to hear it.
Any question?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
So do we want to kick this off with the commission meeting, or do we want to kick it off with a smaller group and then do a commission, do this in a commission meeting?
I would just say a commission meeting would be adequate. I mean,
Whatever is most helpful.
And then would we want to, can we turn this around by the end of May, or do we want to do this as the second meeting in June?
Well, sooner the better, especially if the meeting tomorrow brings us, closer to knowing what help we're asking for. So yeah, second meeting this month, it'd be great.
Assuming we can get other committee members to
Better for you.
join and.
Yeah, and that's the next thing. Would it be an evening meeting or would it be a morning meeting? Because the advisory committee is usually in the
Yeah.
evening, right?
Can I suggest that we meet in the evening and that we go down there prior? We used to take the meetings on the road to the airport and the marina, and I love that. With the requirements for Zoom and all, it's a little trickier now,
Right.
but we certainly could even have an appreciation event or something, but we could go down to the marina prior to the meeting.
Is, so we meet down there prior and then come back here, or is there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to meet down there if it's feasible. I don't know if it is.
Is it feasible to?
Is there a room that we could do Zoom?
Last time we looked, soil and water had worked pretty well in their area. That there's no space available at the building.
Okay.
We could do something, weather permitting, kind of maybe outside, but
Well, I heard you do Zoom outside.
But we certainly could, those that are available and come prior to the meeting, have an event down there. Or meet with the volunteers and take a look at. Right, I'm 6 months.
That'd be kind of a meet and greet where we wouldn't necessarily be interacting with each other.
Well, we wouldn't be discussing. We wouldn't be discussing the issues, right?
Right.
You're just thinking.
An appreciation from the volunteers, but also to update them. I want to see what it looks like. I haven't seen it for a year now, probably.
It sounds like we're all available. That's the first piece there. So
And
On the, which one, the 28th?
that, yeah, it would be 2 weeks from now. I think we could get advisory members chosen and on board by then.
yeah, not for nothing effort. We'll definitely work it for
The
sure.
only thing I would say is might get PST.
Yeah.
So maybe better I get it. Up to you.
Either one worked for me. I would prefer to get started earlier rather than later, but I guess that's dependent if we can get BST there or not. We want to check in and then schedule after. We'll follow up. Any further discussion or comments on that item? Okay, moving on to the Lignetics update.
Okay, well, they continue to make their pellets. I asked for Steve to come and give an update since he's a little closer to it and get some ideas on transformer timeline. He was unavailable. Initially, I know he had talked to Jan Schoenberg down here, and she had experienced some dust. Now, he wasn't sure. His speculation was that it was more actually road related, traffic related, had been dry for a little bit because he didn't think it had the same characteristics of the previous type of material that was coming out. So
He went to see it?
yeah, he went and visited Jan. So with short of him being here, I will say that as we can see, they're still making some product and we'll, obviously operating within their permit and we'll continue to monitor and get the feedback. And I'm sure if she's got significant amount of stuff, she'll send us some pictures. But the fact that she's not here either tells me she's traveling or things are going okay. But nonetheless, we will follow up with her and make sure that she's happy and things are going well. It's been a long trip on the dust. So and they have another thing to do with that. When they upgrade that transformer, they can switch out the hammer mill. So they figured that would be another step in a right direction too. So more to follow.
All right.
Still tracking. We'll keep it on there until you guys tell us to take it off.
Good.
All right, we will move on to item B in new business, the Berry Global Rail agreement. I believe it's just staff report. We don't take any action, but it's fine.
you like to ask questions about the staff report?
Not really.
Good morning, sorry. This is just a staff report with an overview on a recent rail agreement that we signed with Berry Global. Joke in the office was that it was so long in the tooth that we had to update the year. It's really not particularly substantive until we get to the point where we need to do a big maintenance project on the rails where it goes into Holmdel Industrial Park. But when we get to that point, we will now have something solidified with them in writing that explains the share that they're responsible for in terms of future maintenance costs on this spur is pure amount, but they use just a small portion at the beginning of the spur as it starts off.
And how's it been working with them?
Great,
Good,
they're an easy partner.
nice to hear.
They're making a lot of product, so they use this for a lot
Lot of buckets.
of buckets.
Awesome. Any questions or we're good? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, budget discussion and community giving program. Glenn Junior's on tap for that one.
Only if you have questions about budget specifically. The other item on there was how much we want to budget for the community giving program that we had recently implemented. So that's something that we have to get a number on. I think the number that had been bantied about before was $2,000. And so again, these are for the events where entities want to ask support for some support, send us an application. We both stand up our committee, review those and decide on who gets that. But that was just the $2,000 was just an idea. So not each, that's split up. So
Is that the number that's already in the budget? It's number in the budget.
That's a great question.
We didn't actually budget the specific amount.
I don't think it was in.
Is 2,000 a good number? Any?
Well, it's a good number to start with. But are we talking about just picking one a year or are we talking about multiple?
multiple.
Yeah, I think we have.
So, yeah, in your first resolution of 2025, that was the community giving program. That's what you established after the committee, I think, which was Brian and Chip were on. And they had recommended 2,000, but it would be in February and August. So the first one would be in August, and I think it would be awarded in September or something like that.
Right, doesn't sound like anybody has any issues with 2,000. And that was the number we originally talked about, so. I think we are good to move forward with 2,000. Thank you. All right, item D, resolution 2025-08, Scappoose Airport runway rehabilitation phase through approval.
Good morning, commissioners. Good morning. Presenting resolution 2025-08, with consideration of approval regarding the final phase of runway rehab. Phase 3 construction scope of work, Century West. Before I forget, and a reminder, I may have mentioned this from previous, the FAA is sponsoring 95% of this project, right, which is up 5% from their typical 90%. So that is exciting for our Scappoose Airport. In 2021, the Oregon Department of Aviation commissioned a pavement evaluation study at the Scappoose Airport. The study had identified the runway surface needing rehabilitation by 2026. Does anybody have any questions?
I certainly have a couple of questions. So we haven't obviously selected a contractor yet. Is there any ability when we do select a contractor to discuss with them ways to mitigate closure to the runway? I know that we have interested parties here around that.
That absolutely can be a discussion in the park. Amy and I have been discussing with other airports, small GA, Caldwell, Idaho, Homer, Alaska. We have a call with the engineer out of Idaho about closures and ways to mitigate that 60-day closure on the runway. And trying to come up with creative ideas to figure out a way to keep that as short as possible or offer an alternative solution. So we are working and meeting and talking and unfortunately, in terms of selection of the invitation to bid, which closes tomorrow at 3 p.m., our hands are tied in that we have to select the lowest, most responsible bidder. That doesn't mean we can't have conversations regarding mitigation options for the closure and what that might cost for. I can tell you the FAA will not fund an additional like closure process. So if we were to potentially make a closure on a taxi or turn a taxiway into a temporary runway, that would be at our cost.
Okay, yeah.
But those conversations are being had, we're reaching out, it's, you know, each time we talk to somebody, it's like, who should we talk to next? You know, and I have a meeting with Toby Eckler from JUB Engineering, I think in a week and a half to next step, more questions, what can we do? How can we make this as painless as possible?
And regarding,
Go ahead, thank you.
regarding that, any changes that we might want to make, they have to be approved by the FAA?
It would depend what those changes are on the project, what kind of change order would need to be. I do believe, yes, if we were going to make a taxiway, potentially a runway, it would need to be approved by the FAA, but we would be the ones
Who would pay for that?
Yes.
Right.
What sort of things would we incur from a cost standpoint for something like that?
Well, I had a phone call with that gentleman, Toby Eckler from JUB yesterday, and he gave me a range. And again, the last time this happened was 2018, 2019. He estimated a cost between 48 and 50, but again, that was 2018 dollars. That's not 2025, $26. And it's scraping all the lines, you know, the current painting and putting down new lighting, even
Temporary lighting,
temporary lighting, you know.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into turning a taxiway into a temporary runway.
Right.
That would be approved safe by.
And then, so you're gathering all that information?
We are working to get all the information. I reached out, I'm trying to get as much information before I reach out to our ADO in terms of our options and what other airports have done. Not just like local Pacific or Northwest Oregon airports, but just like I said, Caldwell and people who have done this and successfully done this. Interesting, the Homer, Alaska case is a little bit interesting because they work at night because I don't really need to explain too much more why this is a different case versus somewhere local. I'm trying to gather as much as I can.
Yes, I know you
Be
are.
as proactive as I can. I understand the consequences.
And we're talking about June of next year?
June or July, it really depends on when we are awarded the grant. It's anticipated we'll be awarded the grant and get our letter from the FAA in August. That's their typical timeline, and we're on track for that.
Okay.
And then when we can get on a schedule for our contractor schedule after we select that.
and I assume we're kind of hemmed in by weather conditions.
We are
right?
100%.
It has to be basically in the summer.
Yes, during that. It's like in water work, it's pavement works window.
Yeah.
And we have already alerted tenants.
We haven't alerted tenants because we do not have the grant in hand. And I think that's important that we have the grant, although it's looking, you know, we're in the process, we're in. And there's conversations that I have with tenants out there,
Right.
but I don't want to throw a bunch of.
When we don't have
We
the
don't have
specifics.
all the specifics yet.
Right.
I'm happy to have a conversation with any of our tenants about it, but I just want to wait to make a, you know, big statement until we have more information, specifically a grant award in hand.
But it's not a secret.
It's not a secret. I mean,
Common
it's
knowledge.
not a secret. This is the third phase of this project. We've been doing this since 2022. 2022, 2023. So it's certainly not a secret, and we're not keeping it a secret.
It's been discussed at the advisory committee.
It's been
Quite a bit,
discussed at
right?
the advisory committee
Many times.
many times. And again, I've brought, this is third resolution that's come for scope of work approval for Century West, so.
My question about the advisory committee, I mean, I saw the memo that went out and I don't know, in the advisory committee, I'm not a pilot, they are. For their input, and I think a lot of solutions may come from them, and it looked to me like we were kind of limiting their input in some ways that frankly, if I was on that committee, I would accept, but how did the last meeting go?
So the advisory meeting or the work session?
Either one.
The advisory session, which was in March. Yeah,
No, that one we've done, but was it 2 weeks ago Friday or?
the work.
Yes.
I felt like it went pretty well. We had all the questions submitted regarding the airport use template, which is the through the fence agreement template that we would provide to somebody who was interested in through the fence. And the minimum standards, we provided those ahead of time. We asked for questions ahead of time. And then Amy, Bob, and I, we went through those questions, just talked about our justification for what we were willing to concede on and what we were not. We did make, we removed the agreement to pay costs through the fence. And there were a lot of other just questions about language. I have a list of it right here specifically, if you would like me to talk about it. There were just sorry, I'm just reading my notes. Like waste oil and looking into where we could dispose of our waste oil. And I've been looking into EcoLube as a solution to potentially helping and giving our tenants a little bit of just a service that we would provide. So I thought that the second work session went well. I felt like we were very prepared in that we were willing to concede on some things, and then other things, help. I would say Bob was a great resource in terms of the legality of why we couldn't do certain things. So I felt like we came out of it, but we're still working on that process of fine tuning those two documents, specifically the through the fence template or airport use template. I would like to mention that we are very willing to listen to our airport advisory. I mean, there's no. I value that experience very much. Because I certainly don't have 30, 40 years of aviation experience, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. So I'm always willing to take in information and listen and digest that and come to a conclusion. Listen.
I can also, a couple of the points that I think stood out was, the first one was that, to quote someone here, the big book of bureaucracy, this idea that the forms are unfriendly to business, in the way that they're written. Will do this, must do that. And so we've been working on kind of trying to soften that language and be responsive to that critique from the advisory committee, which, as you said, we value. So the big book of bureaucracy. And the second one was there was a lot of concern about the rate of the airport use permit. The through the fence rate was another big one. And a lot of the committee members felt that the rate that was set was much higher than anywhere else in the state, basically. So I think we're still working on that too.
We are still working on that, and yes, thank you for that. Very much wanting to have an open door and then dialogue. Anybody who wants to
Finish up and then ask.
be at the airport or adjacent to the airport. That's very much how, and I speak about Amy and I, what we're trying to put out there.
I appreciate that because it's important to me that the advisory committees, all of our advisory committees, both of them, come unfiltered to the commission. I mean, there's good and bad in there, I'm sure. That's why we have those folks on there, but and it looked like we're heading down a road of restricting comments and all that. I hope that Sounds like things have gotten better, are working better.
Yes, I think the having the questions provided for ahead of time gave us an opportunity to be respectful of people's time. I mean, it was on a Friday afternoon at the request of some of the advisory members who wanted to be there, and well, you know, not everybody has 3-4 hours to debate and carve each point or points that randomly come up during it. So I thought it was important to keep that tight and respectful of some of these for the committee's time. Because people did have hard stops, so I thought that was an important way to guide that.
Because
Not
this
restrict.
meeting had gone over 2 hours. So in those 2 hours, we were listening to all the comments and there were a plethora.
Which just tells us that we need to hear them. I mean, it's just as a general principle, those committees are appointed by the commission and serve the commission. So I want to be sure the commission is hearing everything they have to say.
Yes, we are.
In the spirit of unfiltered feedback, I wanted to check in with Betsy. She mentioned maybe a comment, so.
May I make it from here?
Yeah, I think we can hear you.
For the record, my name is Betsy Johnson and I'm a member of the advisory committee. And I would say that Ms. Toll's characterization of the second meeting is accurate. I think one of the big points of confusion was how much a template was actually a contract document. And excuse me, I think Amy would agree with me that had we to do this over again, that template would have been announced more as guidance rather than a one-size-fits-all template for Through the Fence. I will say that the questions ahead of time had mixed reviews. And there was a school of thought that believed that was stifling, and there was a school of thought that was reasonable. The meetings go a long time because you're affecting the livelihoods of a lot of businesses. And I want to commend Ms. Tolles and Mrs. Bynum for their willingness to look at other options. The first time that this was discussed was, we're closed for 2 months. And that's incredibly problematic for people whose businesses were affected. And the very fact that there's discussion about what can occur to mitigate that closure, I think is a step in the right direction and very much appreciated. And I want to use this forum to express that appreciation on behalf of the airport community. I think the 2 remaining documents remain a work in progress. And I'm not so sure at the end of the very contentious first meeting that we didn't push through rates and fees on the hangars that were completely understood to be what they were, which was the advisory board consenting to the rates and fees. I think the largest concern is that, and thank you, Mr. Salisbury, for mentioning the big book of bureaucracy, and that is regulating customers that have yet to come. And the whole notion of the airport is how can we accommodate customers? The reason that Oregon Aero was there many years ago was to accommodate a customer. I can tell you that Transwestern right now is accommodating your newest tenant, which is Diamond, with some fuel accommodation. And so the notion of a welcoming environment rather than here are the rules, take it or leave it, is something that the advisory committee expressed vehemently. But I acknowledge the willingness to listen and make modifications, and I would just suggest that those last 2 documents remain a work in progress. The one other thing that is not completely on point, but I will raise, is timeliness of response. I am only hearing anecdotally that there is considerable interest right now in the unoccupied building that still you're paying fees on, and I don't know exactly who all is in the interested party pool. But timely responses to prospective customers of the port, I think would be a very important aspect of the relationships at the airport.
Betsy, can you briefly explain the incorporate versus attach issue?
Sure. I think the biggest problem with the minimum standards was the notion that those minimum standards are not required by the FAA. I mean, there's some vagary. The FAA wants tenants to know that there are certain rules and regulations, and they mostly speak to safety. But the question of whether or not by attaching the minimum standards to any contract document, that automatically those minimum standards would by their attachment become contract language that was enforceable, which made every comma subject to conversation and debate. And I think we're still working out to what degree is the inclusion of the minimum standards on a through the fence agreement, for example, inclusion by reference that would make the minimum standards mandatory. And so Mr. Salisbury, even today, has indicated a willingness to continue to work on that question. Because as the advisory committee reviewed these documents, if they become contract documents rather than guidance documents, all of a sudden the level of angst rises exponentially. I mean, with very vague terms, and I don't mean to be pejorative about this, but one of the lines was, shall cooperate with court staff at all times. Well, if I don't stand and salute, that's my least void. And so that was the angst, and I think Mr. Salisbury as an attorney can understand the level of emotion surrounding that, and as long as it remains a work in progress and you're open to the advice and comments of the advisory committee, that will ultimately get documents that are workable. I think there has been some concern expressed that there have been through the fence people that are actually looking at wanting to do business through the fence, and that getting some kind of a path of negotiation, knowing that a template is a guidance document rather than a contract document, would be very helpful. And I think that there's been an effort to make that clear, that customers should not be stifled by the fact that they're this is the through the fences are all negotiated, are not one size fits all cookie cutter. And I would just, as long as I have the floor, report that we are still very much in the hunt for Project Spice, which is really remarkable, and it is tribute to Columbia Economic Team that we're still there. We have winnowed down literally a worldwide search to 2 places, the province of Quebec and Scappoose. And we have been told that there will be a board meeting of the company at the end of May, and we should know. But the fact that we're still standing after winnowing down through a field that was offering all sorts of incentives. Texas was giving away the land, literally giving away the land. And Oregon does not have very many tools in our economic development toolbox, as Lacey knows, as Amy knows from her other life. We just don't have the robust cash incentives that other places have. But we are still very much in the hunt, and that will be transformational for not just Scappoose, but I would dare say the region.
Columbia Commerce Center prospect, just so you're clear where they're talking.
Great. But it also speaks to one other thing in your minutes where you're discussing the marina and having a private sector partner to do business with. None of us, whether we're elected board commissioners or just citizens, should lose track of the fact that there is 70 million of patient capital at the Commerce Center. Looking for customers, trying to get some return on their investment, but the opportunity there is practically limitless. That is the last big chunk of developable industrial property in the Portland metro area. And it will redound to the benefit of the Scappoose Airport.
Right, lots going on at the airport.
I just want to say thank you. That's
Yeah.
good to hear that.
Questions about the resolution?
No,
No, move to adopt resolution 2025-08.
been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, executive director's report.
Morning again, commissioners. I've included in front of you there the email that I'd sent out on Friday. It had a lot of the information on my calendar. What I wanted to update you on was the outreach that we've been doing, getting out there and giving port updates at some of the different civic events. We had presented at Scappoose Economic Development Committee on Thursday, April 17th, St. Helens, Kiwanis on Friday, May 2nd, the Marine Park Advisory Committee on May 6th, Lee County Rotary on May 7th, and Rainier Chamber on May 8th. Still coming up, Clatskanai Kiwanis, Tuesday, the 27th, the advisory, Scappies Airport Advisory Committee on June 2nd. And Classic Night Chamber on Thursday, June 5th. I will say the reception has been good. Obviously, some of these folks in these organizations know us because we attend these meetings. So they tend to be friendly. But I've not hesitated to ask people what they thought about the tax, and we've had good response. So when I use the caveat that my recommendation to the commission will be that we preserve the tax funding for grant matches and or something we would recognize as a direct revenue generating project. That seems to set well with folks, knowing that those grants are multipliers. We can leverage that money and extend our buying power a lot. And that's really, grants are really the big way that we're going to survive as a port district, as most of our port friends along the river and in the Puget Sound rely on federal grants and any state grants that they can get as well. So we'll continue to pursue those. That's really the only way we're going to pay for some of our obligations that we have with the Railroad Avenue, Hope and Talbot cleanup, and the Beaver Dock seismic resiliency. So it's been a good outreach, and Amy's presented a couple times. I've presented some, and we'll continue to talk about the issue with folks.
To that end, like you mentioned, you're going to the traditional, conventional organizations that are comprised mostly of people who are very savvy about what's going on in our county. Is there any outreach going to a broader sector to get people who may not be aware of everything that's going on that others are?
This month's article in the Spotlight will be a variation of my budget message. And that'll be published next week, I believe. So that'll be in the paper. We'll put it on the Facebook as well. But as far as like guerrilla sandwich board, maybe I could walk down the street of St. Helens with come talk to me about.
No, I was thinking more along the line of, you've got two political organizations. You've got the Republicans and the Democrats. Have you thought of attending their meetings?
I have not.
Yes, sure.
Okay.
I'll certainly be interested to see the comments on Facebook. That'll be
You can tell me about them.
I can throw it up on the one of those groups.
Make myself a note here. Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Great idea. Moving along, you might have seen in Miriam's report that we're about to engage with Metro Watch again for security out here at Trestle Beach, and that's a benefit that we provide for the public. We share the cost with Clearwater Paper. It's been very successful getting people out of there on time before the gate closes. Had a lot fewer calls over the past couple of years since we've engaged Metro Watch, because they actually clear the place before the gate gets closed.
So on that, isn't ODOT supposed to do something there for the highway? I know we opened it up to try to encourage people not to use that highway area, but I've seen a few sunny days it's been jam packed again. Are we overflowing, or they couldn't access ours yet because it's been open?
I can tell you, it's still just habit. I mean, there's other than the sign there's no teeth to it. So it's a convenience thing for most people.
I don't want to take it away from people, but it is kind of a dangerous area there.
Yes.
There's a lot of parking down there below. So if we're to fill up, they would have to,
What time does the gate close?
Currently, right?
Does that extend as this, warmer in the summer?
This busy season for the summer season. And Labor Day goes back.
Yeah, that may be why it's kind of.
Certainly see 7 o'clock being a little early at times.
I think a lot of it's habit too. I mean, I think people see that yellow gate, even though there is a sign, and they think that there's business activity down there, so. Might be a little while.
See a few cars that are parking outside our gate towards the end of the day if they're knowing that the gate's gonna be closed. On the calendar, we had a meeting with Parks and Trails folks again. You remember we've been talking with them about the trail, McCormick, or the creek there. And nothing's on fire there. We know that, it's gonna take a little bandwidth for both sides, and I'm trying to keep it as light as possible on our side, just knowing that currently I don't really have anybody to assign that to. If we try to talk about, deeding a portion of the riparian access, from the center of the creek out, the creek has moved over time. There's probably have to be some surveying done. But as we know, that area is mapped pretty wet as far, definitely along the creek. So giving up, a portion of that for, which something that can be done only in those areas with like a trail, is gonna make pretty good sense for us and return some access back to the river. So, treading lightly on that, again, nothing, they're not in a hurry. We're not in a hurry, and we'll continue to work on that issue. We had a nice tour with County Commissioner Kelly Jo Smith. When she was running for office, she got a tour of Port Westward, and she wanted to get a South County tour. So we loaded up the hot rod van and went out and took a look at South County. I feel like, seems like she's really finding her groove on the commission, and seems like a pretty smart fella there. We had our budget meeting. Yeah. You guys want to do what we can find out, we can only focus as far as this second meeting this month or June. So if it makes sense to maybe give BST some time and look at the second meeting for June, or we don't necessarily need to wait for them if we want to, organize our committee and kind of do a kickoff. To Robert's point, kind of, get ahead of the season a little bit, get down there and take a look at things.
And I have no issue on how it's done, whatever gets the best information. If BST is a holdup, maybe you want the committee to meet the end of this month and the full commission one to be in June.
Anything,
whatever works.
and anything we do with them, and no offense to them, is going to cost us money. So anything we can do without them might be good for us to get organized and figure out how we want to move forward with or without them in May.
It seems like the decisions we're gonna make about the marina are gonna have a great impact on this.
Yes.
To use it, and I want to be sure they know that we uncovered every rock.
And if it makes a difference, they could come via Zoom, right?
Yeah.
That's more convenient for them.
Yesterday, a few of us went on a tour of the Scappoose Drainage Improvement Company. That was really, really great. Chase Christensen, the general manager there, that really shows what a little effort and some money looks like. I only half joke, and I don't think people with the Beaver Drainage District would be offended, but they're kind of at they're there. They're working on their certification still, but they're doing really good things. I think having that general manager is huge. I know the folks that are trying to operate the Beaver Drainage District are, working folks, and they would need some help, and we're working on Chase has his bylaws that he said we can look at and model ours after. The Beaver Drainage District has looked at us to help them with updating their bylaws. So we will be taking that on here soon and helping also with expansion of the board, which they discussed at the landowners meeting in March. So they're agreeable to that. We'll get that written in there. The idea being that one of the two expanded positions would be business, or maybe even more specifically, we just say port. Because we'll be the common denominator there even. I was thinking about, we were talking about PGE and Columbia Pacific, maybe having a chance to take a stab at the board position, but those folks rotate as well. It probably makes more sense for the port to have the full time and then take the chance for the expanded position for whoever gets it. So stay tuned on that. I know Bob will be getting a Word version here hopefully soon that we can start tinkering with and helping them with. They have a lot of updates to make anyway, just to get current. Similar, SDIC said they'd gone through updates several times over the last several years, but more recently, a few years ago, when they were looked at pretty tight by Western Law Resource Center, they tightened some things up on their bylaws. So we don't have to wait for something like that. We can help the Beaver Drainage District. Like I said, they're working folks. They're about ready to start getting busy with farming. So I'm sure they'll appreciate the help on some of the admin stuff. And that's just kind of our, as a port, an interested party, a major landowner out there, that'll be our contribution, even without having a board position.
One thing you mentioned, that Beaver Drainage District is same as Scappoose. It's actually
Not a district, it's a drainage improvement.
a company.
in the late great Warren Nackle used to school me quite a bit, but it's a huge difference in some of the ways that the votes are taken. A lot of the things we learned about special districts do not apply. So interesting to shepherd them through, and I'm hoping the Scappoose can serve as a model for Beaver to get where they need to be.
Because he was mentioning that, SDAO doesn't really know what to do with them.
Yeah, sure.
They're just an outlier within the organization.
In their own section body of law, and it's arcane and unique.
Interesting.
Tomorrow, some of you will be on the monthly next PGE port call. Got a broadband action team meeting tomorrow as well. We're trying to get some broadband for the underserved areas and working on a grant with the county to get that. We got the NAMI walk on Saturday, which I will say we've been challenged by the Board of County Commissioners, the Ice Bucket Challenge, and we've got some creative ideas for a response. A few of us will be at the NAMI walk this Saturday. We might do some guerrilla video and maybe put our money where our mouth is and avoid some ice on the head. But that's kind of my goal. But in the spirit of it, I mean, I definitely like the idea of raising awareness for mental health. So happy to do that. I was asked to be a part of the 911 Executive Director Assessment Panel. That has since been rescinded. They had a smaller pool of folks, which was fine. It was going to be almost a day's worth of activity. So I have that day now free again, which I appreciate. Again, Class Night Kiwanis on the 27th, Port Booth at Scappoose Adventure Fest on the 31st on Saturday, Scappoose Advisory Committee on 6/2 and 6/5 Class Night Chain. And the department reports were attached to the email and also in your packet there. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. And it's Elliot's birthday today. Happy birthday.
Hey, Elliot.
Every year.
We bought bagels for him.
Any questions, Sean, or in regards to the staff reports? All right, I guess we'll move on to commissioner reports. So start with Nancy this time.
We're following up on NAMI. This is the first of this new iteration of court commissioners helping with our giving. And so Brian and I are supporting financially our sponsorship and hoping all of you will join us on Saturday for a very long walk. I think it's 1 mile within McCormick Park. We're going to have a booth there and love to see you all. I'd love to have you join us or at least come by and say hi. And the other thing is I'm still chewing over our tour yesterday and so impressed with Mr. Christensen, his knowledge, his professionalism, the look of the pump house is like you could eat off the floors. It's like, it was impressive. And I thank you for including me. And that's about it.
All right. Sure.
The only real thing I've been involved is with the Scappoose Bay Marina group early in the month.
Nothing new to report here.
Lunch with Elliot yesterday. If I'd known it was your birthday, coming up. The Kiwanis, but we'll be presenting tonight to the Clats County Fire District, the intergovernmental agreement for the building. The only thing, and this is 100% on me, I've been traveling a lot and I missed an email with Bob so that I did not get the information to the other directors in time. It's a pretty simple agreement. They may want to approve it tonight, but if anybody asks to delay it to read it, I'm certainly going to allow that. I don't like forcing anything down the commissioner's throat. So they only got it today and it's because of me, but hopefully we'll have it approved either May or June. The June meeting had to be deferred, so it'll be after the port meeting. So it may be July before you guys get it back to vote on it, but we have the language worked out. It's pretty simple, straightforward. Hopefully we'll get it.
Yay.
All right, thank you, Robert. I don't have anything substantial to report. Obviously, a lot going on with Marina, some airport stuff. But most importantly, I think for upcoming is the NAMI walk, which we've already spoke to. Excited to be a part of that. Hoping y'all join. I think it'd be a great way to get out of getting ice water dumped on you. So
I'm all for that.
yeah,
Is that 10 o'clock on Saturday?
Yes,
10 o'clock. Yeah, and we'll be there.
we'll be there early. If you'd like to come early and help us set up the booth.
can we get the feedback for Sean? So that I'd like to have it done well ahead because I will be traveling for the next meeting.
The,
Or
For the evaluation.
okay, yeah,
The new form or whatever.
sounds like that'll be sent out relatively soon.
And if it's wrong, I'll just get it back to you and have a cup of coffee with you and go over it if that works.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you. All right, nothing else on commissioner comments. We do have a couple of items for executive session. Would you like to read the script?
Yes, I will. Board of Columbia County will now be in executive session pursuant to OR 192-660 subsection 2E and F. 2E is to deliberate with persons designated to negotiate real property transactions. 2F is to consider exempt public records, including legal advice from a court general counsel. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any discussions in this or any executive session. Board commission will return to open session, announce any decisions. We do not expect any persons excluded from executive session are welcome to return to open session when it is resumed. Thank you.
Good. There being no further business, meeting is adjourned.